Okay, by the late 90s, tech noir was reaching its crescendo.
Yeah.
We definitely had a lot of tech noirs and Ghost in the Shell. We had Dark City was one of the best ones.
Oh, yeah.
12 Monkeys, I would consider tech noir kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Johnny Mnemonic, Strange Days. And this one gets under the radar because it came out, after The Matrix. And so everybody's like, The Matrix is the best tech noir, cyberpunk noir movie, and this one gets under the radar. It's The 13th Floor.
Yeah, I will, once we get the episode going, I will tell you why this movie failed. I have irrefutable proof. I know why this movie failed, and I'll explain that in a second. But for right now, we're going to step somewhere between 12 and 14, and we're going to jump into The 13th Floor.
Yeah, 13th. Let's go.
And welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Hi, I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for watching. Thanks for finding us. And for your loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. You can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. We are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out that website for other film critics reviews. Today we're going to talk about a 1990 film that got under the radar. Everybody kind of forgotten about. And I still retained it because it was one of the last movies that came out when I still worked at the video store. The 13th Floor.
All right, so when computer scientist Douglas Hall learns his mentor, Hannon Fuller, has been killed, leaving behind a secret meant for Hal, Douglas has only one way to retrieve it, by entering a virtual reality world that Fuller helped create. This simulation, modeled after Hannon Fuller's youth of the 1930s, contains avatar versions of Douglas and Hannon, and Douglas must find his mentor and learn his secret, all the while avoiding a detective who believes Douglas is responsible for Fuller's death.
Okay, so I'm going to warn you right now. Do not watch the trailer for this movie at all. Don't look at it. Don't even try it because the trailer reveals so much of the movie that if you watch it, you're eventually going to go, oh, that's what's in it, because the trailer reveals too many secrets. Do not watch the trailer of the movie. It's one of the worst trailers out there.
Not only that, but I'm going to get to right here. This trailer is why this movie failed, without a doubt, because this trailer is for a horror movie. 13th Floor is not. I have spent the last 23 years believing the 13th Floor was a horror movie, and then when you said we should watch it on the show, I was like, okay, for Scary Movie Saturday, and you're like, no. And I was convinced that this was going to be a horror version of The Matrix of some sort, and it's absolutely not that. So not only is the trailer heavily spoilery, to the point where it's like, why even watch the movie at that point? It's also incredibly horror-driven. It was on one of my VHS tapes growing up.
Okay.
I watched it a bunch whenever I'd watch whatever movie it was. And I was like, this movie looks great. How come I've never seen it? Well, it's not the movie that's in the trailer. And that's why the movie failed. I think without a doubt, that is what happened.
It's a complete opposite of the Neon Demon. That trailer is fantastic.
That trailer's better than that movie.
That trailer was art. When you watch the movie, you're like, it feels deflating a little bit because the trailer's fantastic.
Yep.
And trailers make or break. And if I've been the director of this film and I give this to a company to do the trailer for it, I'll be pissed.
Yeah.
Because it's just too much secrets. And if you didn't know, it's about simulations, and it's very similar to The Matrix. And that's the other component to this. This came out after The Matrix, and we just got bombarded with one of the best films of the year. And then this gets, after the wake here, which is almost feels like, oh, you're just trying to cash in on The Matrix. So we have to talk about the other element of the
The problem with The Matrix of it all is actually, I think if this movie came out a month before The Matrix, it would be a different story. And that wouldn't be the story of this movie becomes the ultimate film and The Matrix is forgotten. That's not the case. It's because this movie's very very secret, it's at hand, is a Matrix level spoiler. Like watching the movie, it was not even occurring to me that they were in the 90s in a simulation.
Right.
It was always that they were going into the 30s. The 30s was the simulation, and they had lulled me into a false sense of security thinking the 90s had to be real. And that's the thing, is the reveal that the 90s isn't really real and that we're actually in 2024 or potentially even further out. That is a reveal that happens at the end of this movie that happened at the beginning of The Matrix. So watching The Matrix...
And it happens in the beginning of the trailer, too.
Yeah, but when you watch The Matrix, you're like, oh my god, we're in a simulation. That's a crazy idea for a movie. You get to the 13th floor, and when that reveal happens, you're like, oh my god, it's the same thing I just saw last month. Yeah. That's the problem with it, is that it might be the order of it all. If you'd seen the 13th floor before The Matrix, I don't know if it would have been the kind of holy crap moment,
So it's loosely based on a book called Simulacron 3. Also, there was a TV show in Germany called World on a Wire.
Yeah.
After this, Gretchen Mol would become on a TV show called Life on Mars, very similar to this story.
Yes.
She's almost like Jennifer Connelly, where she's perfect for a genre piece. Like Jennifer Connelly has that 1940s kind of...
when she's in The Rocketeer, you're like, yep, that's
man.
right.
Gretchen Mol is perfect for somebody that fits for the 1930s, kind of what they do for that.
She's got a 30s and 90s.
30s and 90s.
Visual
She's
appeal.
perfectly for that. But then she plays this cashier, and it looks so out of place in the movie.
Yeah, it stops you for a second. You're like, I don't
just-
know her very well, but that doesn't seem right.
Craig Burke is in this. You understand? I think the last time I see him after this was he was in the Cinderella Man, playing the rival Max Baer, the boxer. Max Baer, which is the Cinderella Man, Russell Crowe's rival in the movie. Max Baer was a real person. His son was Max Baer Jr., who went on the TV show Beverly Hillbillies. But Craig played the character Max Baer in Cinderella Man.
Not only that, Craig Bierko, I
Bierko.
didn't recognize him from Cinderella Man initially because I don't think he's not the biggest element of that film.
he's very just 1 second.
But he is, without a doubt, the most Tom Cruise-y actor in the world because he was in Scary Movie 4, basically playing Tom Cruise. Because that film had a very heavy War of the Worlds vibe to it, and he basically was playing the Tom Cruise character in that film, and he was mimicking Tom Cruise the whole time. He was, I think he was fantastic in the movie.
It's all in the eyes, right?
But that
It's all
film
in
even
the-
ends with his character going on Oprah and jumping on a couch and ripping Oprah's hands off and like running around like a
Scary
batshit
Movie 4.
crazy guy.
Yeah.
I really enjoy Scary Movie 4, even though it's a bad movie. And Craig Bierko is a very good comedic actor. I don't know if he's entirely cast correctly to play Douglas Hall. But
I
one
think that's
thing-
another step for this movie that we can talk
One thing
about.
I appreciate about his
Misstep, I mean.
performance is that I find Craig Bierko to be a guy who can disappear into a role. So it's nice that he's playing the Ferguson character in the 30s. I didn't realize that was him the first time he appeared. Like when they show his like mugshot, I was like, oh, okay, so that's some other guy that he's going in his body. I was like, oh crap, that's him, isn't it? Like he does disappear into the role pretty nicely.
Well, in the cover, it's Gretchen first.
Yeah. Yeah, and just the way he's like photographed in a number of scenes is very much like, and it's like he can do more than that. And I think it's sad that he's not really risen.
I would,
past
you know what? If I was making this movie in 1999, I would hire Jeremy Sisto.
That's
I
fair.
think he would have the range for maybe being a leading man. Not really all that, but can blend into the background.
The only problem with Jeremy Sisto is that Jeremy Sisto, I love him for this, is insane. When he's in movies like Wrong Turn or like his turn on 6 Feet Under is really great. When he can play that unhinged, it's really, really good.
You needed
Problem
that
is,
for this movie.
We have unhinged in this movie already. We have our requisite unhinged man, which is Vincent D'Onofrio.
D'Onofrio, right? Yeah. Yeah.
There's no better way in the late 90s to be like, Vincent D'Onofrio's in this, he plays the weird guy. Like when you look at him in The Cell and in Men in Black, this film in like a 3-year
But he has
period,
two different
plays
things he has to do. He
bonkers
has to do the
people.
reserve bartender and then the off to geeky. But he does it successful.
He does
He's
it
one of the
very
things.
well.
One of the nice things about this movie.
Yep.
Yeah. Next is Armand Mueller-Stahl. You understand he's in the movie The Game.
Yes, he
in
was,
the movie,
yes.
The Game. Had a brief in the late '90s, a brief career where he was doing a lot of films, and this is one of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
I recalled him when I first saw him in this movie. My mind went back to his character. He plays a cardinal in Angels and Demons, which I think is an underrated Robert Langdon film in the Ron Howard
But he plays that
series.
reserve, always that reserve.
That's
guy.
the thing, is he's always one of those guys. He seems smarter than even the characters he's playing, and he tends to play smart
That's
characters.
another
but he always
explain-
seems just a little bit smarter than that person. So like when he's playing the 1930s Avatar version of the character, and he's like, I know I'm not cheating on my wife. I know that I'm not doing that. But he's not playing a guy who's perceived as intellectual. But he's just the performance he gives is that there's something. His mind is
Something
always
there,
turning.
yeah.
He's trying to figure it out, but he can't. And I appreciate that about him.
It's almost like when they go to the bar scene, the club scene, the dance scene. It almost feels like we're going back almost to like the Rocketeer.
Yeah.
I don't know why I have to rest. Maybe because I have Jennifer Connelly in my brain. And it's very much like the Rocketeer, almost a sci-fi Rocketeer, almost the nostalgia of the '30s movies and all that stuff.
And I was pretty impressed with the look of the 30s. I thought they captured it pretty well.
Yeah, they
Where
got
it's
authentic cars
It's
and
a
streets.
little bit realism, but it's a little bit how you would think it would look. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that kind of plays with like the idea that it's coming out of someone's memories. It's like it's the nostalgic version of the 30s.
Yeah.
More than the real one.
This was also edited by Henry Richardson. He did 54 films to his career. I would say editing my phrase is editing saves this movie, but I think you need to clean up a little bit more. Mm-hmm. You need to keep the pacing a little more because it's supposed to be a murder mystery, is the tangled web, and you have a lot of different subplots, but you kind of forget that there's a murder mystery in this because the aesthetic is really pleasing.
Yeah. The problem I have with it, I did like the movie.
And I think the script is a little bit sloppy, too.
The script is a little sloppy, and this is the thing where I might break your heart here. I think this movie's a little too focused on the noir mystery. I think, like, what's more interesting, what saved the movie for me is when I got about halfway through, I was like, all right, let's wrap this up. Like, come on, like, let's start going here. When we start getting these sci-fi elements that start to reveal themselves and start to complicate the plot, that was when I was like, oh, wait. Oh, we're going here. Like, I was getting into it at that point. I feel like the going into the 30s element, I just feel like the 30s felt played out in the film, where I wasn't as interested in anything that was happening there until we start getting actual reveals that change our 90s plot. Because it felt at the times like the 30s part was like, hey, check out what we did in this movie. And it's like, I'm more interested in, like, what's actually happening here? Like, what's going on? So the murder mystery is overcomplicated and takes up too much time.
I think it's right, and that's probably, that's another kernel of noir. It's murder mysteries are overcomplicated. But you're right.
Yeah, but this one is this movie's not about the murder mystery, and that's the problem, is that the noir aspect would have worked in a noir film, but this is a sci-fi movie, and I'm not interested in the story as much as I am with this part.
I think both and I agree. There is something missing, because there's a love story involved in this that gets washed away at the side, too. That almost is like, forgot this is supposed to be a love story too. Yeah. And that gets almost like, let's just dump this in there. But we understand there needs to be a punch to this. Either you focus on the murder mystery really heavily, or focus on the love story. And I think they're trying to balance it out, and it's getting lost.
Yeah.
So if I was looking at the script, I go, what do you want to concentrate more? You want a Casablanca of sci-fi? I'm all for that. Or you want Blade Runner in 1930, kind of a murder mystery kind of a thing. You go with that kind of aspect.
Yeah, it feels like they had like a trilogy planned out. I know it's not the case, but it feels like they had like a murder mystery movie, a Casablanca movie, and then like a big, like, we've got people from their timeline infiltrating ours. Like, it felt like you have three different, like, full-fledged plots that could take a whole movie, and then they're like, oh, we don't have the funding for that, and just squeeze it into one movie, because there's elements from a lot of them that could work, but the focus is on a lot of stuff.
And I'm thinking out loud, a Casablanca sci-fi movie like this, what the hell? Go for it, man.
Yeah, let's see that movie right now.
I mean, you had the cafe location, and, you know, Gretchen Mol can play the Ingmar Bergman. I'm seeing it right now. It worked out great. Yeah. So, you like, different elements. It's a little sloppy script. It probably got out of the oven too early. And that's, not to mention timing in this world of filmmaking. Timing is everything.
Yeah, you could make a great movie that still disappears, and I maintain this movie is still pretty solid. And I think it would have worked better if it came out before The Matrix. And I don't think it would have deterred from The Matrix's success. It just would have helped this movie's success. Kind of like how Dreamscape and Nightmare on Elm Street, if they had a little bit more separation,
about the same time.
Yeah, they both would have worked fine. But it's the fact that they came out jammed together that audiences looked at them and said, one of these has to live and one has to die. You know?
Right. Matrix of 13th Floor, this one has to live. And the selling of it almost, and the title needs to be changed.
The title is bad. The trailer is bad. The poster is bad. Everything marketing-wise from this movie is an absolute nightmare. Because none of it actually tells you what's going on in the movie, or it tells you way too damn much.
And I think from reading the script, you don't know what the hell's going on. Dennis Haysbert?
Yeah.
Am I saying it right?
President Palmer.
Yeah. The unit, right?
Well, I loved him on 24. I think he's like
24,
one of the best elements of 24.
The TV show David Mamet's The Unit.
Yep.
He was actually one of the guys, one of the bad guys in Heat.
Yep.
Does a hell of a job being the overly cliche detective.
Yes.
But you understand why he's cliched.
Well, yeah, the thing is, he plays the role that he's supposed to play, so it's hard to criticize the woodenness. It's hard to criticize the fakeness of the character, because it's kind of the point. It's kind of like how I can't criticize him for selling me car insurance with Allstate. He's doing what he's there to do.
But he has that retained voice, right? It's almost like you understand he is manufactured.
Yeah.
And as an actor, you understand this character's manufactured, so that you can't really pull a lot of feeling out of it.
Yeah.
But then he's upset that he can't.
But I was talking with someone after watching this movie someone who actually was a big fan of this movie when it came out and kind of hadn't spoken about it in a while, and he said Dennis Haysbert. Well, he said Dennis Haysbert was his favorite character. And I was like, how do you mean? And he's like, because he has one moment at the end of the movie where he basically understands that he's not real, and he doesn't care because he's like, I'm still living my life. I want to
out.
keep living it.
Yeah.
And I was like, interesting. I hadn't even thought about that.
He
But
is,
like,
and
yeah,
I-
he's
I
the guy
agree with
who
your friend.
realizes he's not real, but he's like, but I'm real to me. And I was like, whoa, like that is absolutely, yeah, he does have maybe the best character moment at the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's that self-reveal that
Yep.
we get when I critique, like, go hunting, this self-consciousness that this is who I am. And we always talked about with writing, it's all about what are you identifying with? You are searching for your true self.
Yep.
Obviously, Dennis's Haber's character understands his true self, and he's comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And he tells everybody else, leave us alone.
But he basically hits a moment, like, spoiler alert for the movie Inception, he hits a moment that they do at the end of the movie Inception where is Leonardo DiCaprio's character still in the dream or still awake? And the answer is it doesn't matter because he believes he's awake. And that's the whole thing. That's basically what Haysbert's character hits at the end of this movie.
Exactly,
He hits
yeah.
a point where am I real or am I fake? It doesn't matter. I'm real to me. And they hit that movie 11 years before Inception did. Maybe not as well as Inception did, but they did hit it pretty well.
Yeah.
So
And so, yeah, when we do writing, we always talk about is your character seeking its true self. Mm-hmm. And I think hit the nail on the head for the supporting characters.
it's absolutely
And
what
I
he's
think
seeking.
for the lead characters, Gretchen Mall's character is not seeking her true self. She's seeking a substitute, which is
Yep.
even if you're doing that, you're seeking something you need to you need to correct.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's still getting lost in the script. Her real search and purpose. Because obviously she wants to correct what her real husband's doing, but you're not really explaining that very well.
Well, and I wish we had time with the husband because it's hard for me to just assume that he's a generic bad guy.
Yeah, generic psychopath.
You
right?
know, and because he's played by Craig Bierko, because that's who he is playing him, I've connected with Douglas. We've spent our time with Douglas. So it's kind of like if you tried to explain to me who Ferguson was, his guy in the 30s. I wouldn't really know because we don't spend any time with Ferguson. It's because we spend time with Ferguson through Douglas.
Right,
Same
yes.
thing happens with the husband. We don't spend enough time with him as a
Not as-
separate entity to give a crap when he's the villain of the story.
Yeah.
It's like I don't care anymore because like I didn't spend time with him. So like he just kind of it becomes a mustache twirling performance at that point because Bierko is really doing the best he can with no characterization for his future self.
But it does that tech noir of showing the city scenes. You get you rent the helicopter and just
As you should.
and but it's also the reveal of what we talked about in tech noir. Are you just part of the cog in the machine, or are you searching for your true self? I think the movie does enough justice to explain be part of the genre. But tech noir is always about, are you part of the mechanics, the machinery? My God, we had a band in the 90s called Rage Against the Machine. I mean,
Yeah.
this is tech noir is what the subgenre is. Are you going to be just a cog, conform, or are you going to break out and be your own self?
Yeah, and it's using that structure that we can confront very difficult philosophical questions. I think when we have a movie like this or like The Matrix out in the 90s, that's confronting things that I think general movie-going audiences, I'm not saying you're dumb, I'm just saying general movie-going audiences,
Just want to ride.
yeah, like they weren't expecting to have these kinds of questions, and I do think it makes it palatable to ask these questions, because I think this like, are we in a simulation, are we real, what is life? These are all questions that we ask in sci-fi.
There's a real authentic scientific theory out there called the holographic principle that believes that the whole universe is just a hologram.
Exactly. But we ask this stuff in sci-fi writing a lot. It hadn't been very often where a mainstream sci-fi film had confronted these very difficult questions and relayed them to the layman, to the person who's not reading sci-fi.
No, because in
And
the
that's
late
what
80s, the Star Trek The Next Generation dabbled with holograms.
But that was even Star Trek viewers, which were
Yeah.
not general audience viewers.
Exactly.
It's kind of like we constantly hit this question of, can we make these really difficult principles work and these questions work in mainstream? And we totally can. This movie's failure is not because it confronts philosophical questions or sci-fi. This is a failure of marketing, not of movie making. And that's what's at play there.
Yeah, and it's in the indulgence. Why are you creating a simulation? Is it the indulgence, or to seek out a little more philosophical answer about identity, or just it's your playground?
Yeah, exactly.
An expensive playground on the 13th floor. But I think aesthetic, hit it right.
Yep.
I think story needs to clean up a little bit. Where are you going to really clean up? Where do you want to do love story? You want to do a murder mystery? obviously there's murders in Casablanca. It's not really, there's
Yeah.
who's got the tickets,
It's
right?
less about that, you know?
Who cares about who has the tickets? I want to, yeah.
It's a movie that I think actually, much like The Matrix, set itself up for nicely for sequels, for franchising, for going further, because there are a lot of stories you can tell with these multiple levels, and we may not even have had a movie like Inception if the 13th Floor was popular and did this kind of storytelling, because you could have basically hit Inception 10 years
I
early.
think it's something like Westworld, HBO,
Yeah.
where you could have gone everywhere. I mean, even in this book, The Westworld,
Yeah,
there's
the
like
possibilities are very endless.
Yeah, we're almost we always talk about it. I think it's time for a redo.
Yeah, I think this is one you could revisit, and even if you didn't call it the 13th Floor, because I mean you've got the source material Simulacrum.
It's called
3.
Simicon, but even,
You've got World on a Wire, which was a popular other version of this story that a lot of people don't know. Yeah, they're both based on the same book, like they are. That's why this is not ripping off that. They're both on the same book. Yeah. And I think that it's possible to revisit this material in an interesting way. And I think you can still separate it from the Matrix of it all. I don't think having a recent Matrix movie is going to take away from the potential this movie has to be good.
And then talk about it for the last 30 minutes. I'm going to redo it because I want to do a Casablanca simulator sci-fi. I'm thinking about it. The more I'm talking about it, the more I think that's what you need to do.
Fair enough. I have one last question for you because it's one that really boggles my mind. Okay. And
Why did I like this movie?
No, this is just an extrapolation of watching the movie. Someone posited online as a theory because in the 30s, there is the note that the Hindenburg blew up. There's the news piece that we see. Mm-hmm. And someone made the question then, are we living in the 30s simulation aged up through the 2020s? Or is that moment in the simulation based on the actual event? Like in the 90s of this movie, did the Hindenburg blow up?
Right.
Or did it just blow up in the 30s version, the simulation? Because then it's basically saying we're in a simulation right now.
Like I said, there's real authentic theory.
There's a lot of things you can do.
There's a book out there that says the universe is flat, the world is round, by Brian Greene. That explains that the whole universe is just a three-dimensional projected hologram.
Yep.
Right. So I'll buy into that one.
Yeah.
We're living in a hologram.
My face is melting, but thankfully my programmers didn't do that. Yeah. Let us know if you've seen the 13th Floor. It's streaming now on HBO Max.
So overall, did you like it?
I like this movie, yeah.
Yeah, just hate the trailer. Don't look at the trailer.
I hate the trailer. I hate the marketing because it sold me a bill of goods that the movie is.
This is funny because we hate the title, we hate the story, we hate the trailer, but we actually enjoyed the movie.
Oh, enjoyed the movie, yeah. Like I said, it dips for me as it goes on, but then right about halfway through, as we start to get our realizations, it starts to go like into really uncharted territory.
Like the corkscrew at Valley's Fair.
Yep. And so this is a movie I did like, and I would recommend you checking it out on HBO Max because it doesn't cost you anything, at least as long as
it's on HBO Max.
So check it out over there. Let us know your thoughts down below on this film. And actually, I would love to know this. Give us a small ranking of your 90s Are We in a Simulation movies. Yeah. Dark City, this movie, The Matrix,
the
Existence. Let us know those movies right there down below. Which ones are your favorites? Which ones are your least favorites? Which one would you have wanted to get the franchise appeal? We'd love to hear about that.
You could put Strange Days on there.
Strange Days, yeah.
James Cameron.
There's a lot of those movies that just kind of like... And one of them had to live. The Matrix lived. They all had to be sacrificed so the Matrix could live.
Right.
But yeah, let us know your thoughts down below on that. And while you're down there, please like and subscribe to the video. There are 2 free things you can do. They don't cost you anything. Please go ahead and join us so you never miss an episode of the show. We have Mondays. We have Thursdays. We have Scary Movie Saturdays. We also have exclusive stuff on the Patreon if you want to check out Picks with Kyle and Nick. Last month, we covered our top 10 movies from 1997.
We did. Check it out.
A great list. Please check that out. And this month, we're doing our top 5 Alfred Hitchcock films over on the Patreon. You can join up there, get exclusive content for as low as $1 a month. So check out those tiers right now.
I bet one of them, the Hitch movie, deals with murder.
Don't you put me in a corner. But until then, you can find all my film reviews over at GoatFilmReviews.com.
You can find my reviews of St. Paul Filmcast anywhere you find a podcast. It might be a simulation, too.
Simulated reviews.